Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. Today, we are discussing how to recover from accidents, both physically and financially. And as always, Legal Rideshare breaks it down. And of course, from Legal Rideshare, I am joined by the co-founder and lead attorney, Brian Greening. Brian, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Jared. It's a little rainy here, but it's still a good one.
It's a little rainy, which means, accidents are prone to happen. So, what a good time to discuss accidents and injuries. We do a lot every week about, the daily topics. We just had a Delivery TV on and Rideshare Guy. It's been a minute since we've done this. And given the fact of a lot of the calls and emails I keep getting, and I'm sure you keep getting, I just think it's really important for us to just go over the basics again with, what happens after an accident, why you need an attorney, how the insurance plays a role, how you deal with medical bills. There's just a lot involved, and I think we just need to get to the basics and talk it through.
Yeah, I agree. You can never be over-prepared, and this is some complex information that we get to see every day, and unfortunately, a lot of drivers just aren't armed with the knowledge, as to what to do in this type of situation. Most drivers don't get in accidents all the time. A lot of time when you get in an accident, it's the first time that it's happened, particularly on a rideshare app. So we're just trying to spread the information, make sure that drivers have the information and education that they need to best protect themselves when the unfortunate inevitable occurs.
Right, exactly. And if you just want to, as usual, just kind of give a rundown of what Legal Rideshare does, I think that, and how we help, I think that's just a good way to always start.
Yeah, Legal Rideshare is we're a personal injury law firm that's entirely dedicated to Uber and Lyft accident and injury claims. So we've been around for nearly a decade. Our focus is ensuring that drivers are protected when they get injured in a car accident on the job. We help recover medical bills for drivers. We help recover their lost wages, pain and suffering, and any other damage that they might sustain as a result of this work injury.
Got it. And so just like you said, I think it's the basics. People don't always get into accidents, which is a good thing. And I think that's why it's important just to keep reminding drivers and gig workers, here's kind of the process, here's things you need to know. Obviously, we don't want people to get in accidents, but it happens. But to start off, there's something that I get a lot of questions about this. I'm sure you do too. Can you briefly explain the periods? So period 1 through 3 and what that means for drivers and gig workers.
Yeah, so the periods are actually a really important part of this process because they dictate the level of insurance that's available, and oftentimes even if there is insurance available to a driver. So I think we actually want to start with period 0, which is when you're not on the app. When you're driving your car around for your own personal business, obviously the rideshare insurance is not going to have anything to do with that. That's going to be when you go through your own personal insurance if there's an accident or injury. When the app is turned on and you're looking for a ride but haven't paired with someone, then you're what's called period 1. When you've connected with a passenger and are on the way to pick up that passenger, you're in period 2. And when you've got the passenger in your car, you're in period 3. Rideshare companies' level of insurance, whether it's for property damage, liability, even underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage, that all changes depending on what period you're in. When you're in period 1, you have far less protection than you do when you're in period 3. So you just want to keep that in mind, where this $1 million insurance policy that everybody always talks about isn't always $1 million. Sometimes it's non-existent, sometimes it's far less, and that's why the nitty-gritty matters so much.
Yeah, and given a typical situation with an accident, drivers are really only covered with it's period 2 and period 3, correct?
Period 2 and period 3 is when you've got the most coverage.
That's right.
And you've always got this liability coverage that we talk about, that $1 million. So if you injure someone else, there's going to be coverage for you in those period 2 and period 3 events. Where it really changes is when you're injured yourself or you've got property damage there's almost never that full $1 million that you hear about to protect you. So a lot of drivers come to me and they say, well, I'm not worried about paying for my medical bills. I'm not worried about this. I'm not worried about that because I got this big policy. The facts of your accident, the time in which it occurs, can dictate whether you've got no insurance coverage, $25,000 of insurance coverage, $50,000. There's a wide variety, and it just depends on when your accident takes place, at what period it takes place in. So that's why you call us, so that we can hear exactly what happened, exactly when it happened, and tell you how much insurance is available through the rideshare company or through the at-fault party or anywhere else that we might be able to dip into to recover for your losses.
And then where does, just so drivers understand, where does the rideshare endorsement play a role in all this? That is for the gaps in coverage, correct?
So the rideshare endorsement relates to your own personal insurance policy. Many rideshare drivers don't tell their personal insurance that they do rideshare work. They keep that secret for a variety of reasons. One that we hear often is, well, I'm concerned that my insurance company will drop me if they find out that I do rideshare work. Or the other is, I want to keep the costs of my insurance low, so I'm not going to pay for this extra coverage. That's really the worst thing that you can do. You need to pay for the rideshare endorsement, which allows for coverage in certain periods, like period 1, where the rideshare policies are not very good, can give you more coverage. Property damage claims, it can lower your deductible. A lot of times the rideshare companies have huge deductibles for property damage, $2,500. Well, if you take out the right insurance on your own policy, you can get that reduced sometimes to $500 or even less. I tell drivers all the time, this is your business. You are working as an independent contractor. You are working for yourself. You need to spend some money to protect your business and protect your livelihood. And that's where taking out that extra insurance policy, that rideshare endorsement, really comes into play, and why it's vital that you do so. Spend a little bit of extra money now to save your money later. Right,
and if if there's something you can tell drivers, once they get into an accident, what is just a few key things like we do, just for everyone at home and those who are watching, we have a driver checklist. We kind of do an A through Z of what to do after an accident. But what are really the key things that you see that can trip up when a driver gets to an accident right after it happens? What are those few steps that they absolutely need to take?
Yeah, so I'll first say you want to make sure that everybody's okay, and if anybody needs medical attention, take care of that immediately. Get the medical treatment you need, get the ambulance on the scene. That's step number one. But in terms of protecting yourself and your interests, you should call the police. If they are willing to come out to the scene and make a report, that's always a good idea, because that's going to be documentation of the event. It's going to have witness information. It's going to have sometimes diagrams of what happened, where the vehicles were, insurance information. To have that authoritative report early on is actually a really helpful thing. Next is you want to be a bit of a detective yourself. Get the witnesses' information and document it. So a lot of times drivers will not ask their passenger for their name and contact information. They'll think, well, I don't want to step over any lines, or I don't want to, I'll just get it later from the rideshare company. You need to gather that information, because that's a really important witness, and it's not always so easy to find these people later. Just take down their name, take their cell phone number. That way, if they leave the scene, they hop in another Uber, you're not caught without that vital information. I would also take photos of the vehicles, the property damage, the positions of the cars after the crash. That way, if the other person who's involved in the accident changes their story later, you've got documentation of exactly how things looked. So it's really just important to be assertive in gathering evidence, because once people leave the scene, once the vehicles change locations, it's really hard to recreate that situation and to find that evidence down the road.
We had just talked about this not too long ago, and just like you said, trying to find those witnesses and the passengers. It brought up something that is absolutely crucial and something I talk to about with drivers every single day. Time is of the essence. I don't think drivers understand how important it is to get a hold of us immediately versus, well, I have a year of a statute of limitations, and so I can call in 6 months. I think you need to explain what happens if they delay.
Yeah, we get calls all the time from drivers who waited too long, and there's really nothing that we can do at that point. They've essentially ruined their claim by inaction. So if you bring on legal rideshare, there's a couple steps that we can take right away. One, we can work to preserve evidence. We can be in contact with the witnesses and gather statements. We can get photos that can help your case. We can look for surveillance footage, whether it's from the city or nearby businesses. All that stuff goes away after sometimes a week, sometimes 30 days, certainly not months later that are we going to be able to collect that. Also, drivers sometimes wait to get medical treatment because they're afraid, well, I can't afford it, or my neck's stiff, but I'll wait a while to see if it gets better on its own. Insurance companies use those gaps in treatment against you to say, well, if you weren't injured at the scene of the occurrence and you didn't go get treatment for a few weeks or a few months later, then you didn't actually sustain an injury in this event. Legal rideshare and law firms can help connect you with doctors who will see you at no out-of-pocket cost. We can put stop gaps in those gaps of treatment. So whether it's on a gathering evidence side, whether it's on a treatment side, we can help make sure that you take the initial steps to give the strongest claim to the insurance company down the road. When we're making that final settlement demand, I want to package up your case in as a gift to the insurance company and say, look, everything's perfect, now pay up. So if you don't call us and you miss some of those initial steps, you're just making for a weaker claim and perhaps killing your opportunity to bring a claim at all.
It's a perfect segue into, we call this, we're calling this segment, how to recover financially and physically. And I want to cover the physical part first because you just discussed it. There's a lot of, I'm sure you see, I know you're not a doctor, but I know you've dealt with a lot of, obviously, injury claims. And so, what is kind of a common injury that seems like not a big deal, but can escalate pretty badly if it's not taken care of? It's kind of like the whiplash, concussion.
Yeah, so a lot of the big injuries, like the traumas that cause fractures, that people are screaming from pain, they're going to go get treatment right away after an accident. Those are usually the people that end up in an ambulance, and rightfully so. But a lot of times these rear-end car accidents or even T-bone collisions can jolt the body in a way that can cause whiplash, which is when the body is accelerating forward and backward quickly, which causes injury to the neck and sometimes to the lower back. It also causes a traumatic brain injury. When your head is jarred and quickly put in motion, your brain can actually move inside your skull, causing a concussion or a variety of other issues. A lot of times people with these headaches or feeling nauseous or feeling a stiff neck or little pain, they don't seek treatment until much later. These are actually the types of injuries that can get worse over time and for which immediate treatment can be very beneficial. We recommend that you go get checked out either in an emergency room, at an urgent care, a primary care doctor, whatever you think is appropriate for you, but to get the process started so that if there's evaluation that needs to be done, if there's therapy that needs to be started, whatever the doctor recommends, you get going right away. That's going to mean that there's less time in the doctor's office. If you start treating earlier, you can get ahead of these things, and also going to make for a stronger insurance claim, like I talked about earlier, where the insurance company can't say, well, he didn't go get treatment, so therefore he's not hurt. You're nipping that in the bud right away.
Yeah, and that's something that, obviously a lot of drivers are concerned that they don't have the money to pay for it and they don't have insurance, but that's where Legal Rideshare steps in to help them recover physically, correct?
Yeah, we have lots of contacts throughout the country, really, of medical providers who will see people who are involved in accidents at no out-of-pocket cost initially to the person. What they're going to do is they're just going to give the person the treatment that they need. They'll keep track of their bill, and then at the end of the case, they're confident enough in our ability to fight with the insurance company that we will be able to recover the cost of that medical treatment and get those bills paid. So a lack of ability to pay or lack of medical insurance is really no excuse. We have the contacts to get you that treatment and get those bills paid down the road.
So let's segue into the financial part. You talked about the bills. Obviously it's something that we handle and they can recover. But what else, when they hire a law firm like LegalRideshare, what else can they recover financially?
When you're dealing with an insurance company by yourself, a lot of times you can get the cost of medical treatment. Sometimes they'll slash those bills and say you went someplace that has, that's overbilling or charging too much. Well, LegalRideshare steps in. We make sure that you get the full cost of your medical treatment and more. Insurance companies generally don't provide unrepresented individuals with damages like pain and suffering, loss of normal life. Even wage loss is really challenging for an unrepresented person to recover. So LegalRideshare steps in. We're going to get the full medical bills paid for. We're going to get the wage loss recovered. We're going to get pain and suffering. We're going to get loss of normal life. If there's any sort of disfigurement, like you need a surgery and have a scar, or if the glass from a windshield shot up in your face, things like that, we're going to add dollars in all those different areas where an insurance company is just not going to provide that to you.
Yeah, and that's what's key. I sent out a lot of email blasts to our followers. You think Uber or insurance is going to pay fairly? Think again, right? They're not even paying fair wages to begin with. They're not going to pay fair when it comes to things like you just talked about, where there's a lot of other incidents and things at stake, and they're just sort of going to go, well, here's the bottom dollar. And we don't want gig workers and drivers to come to us after they settled, because then they're at a loss. There's nothing they can do, right? When they settle, if they don't call us and they just take whatever, they're done, right?
Yeah, well, there's times in which, let me answer your question directly. If
Yeah.
you settle your case, yes, you're done. There's nothing that we can do. We can't reopen it. We can't get you more money. You've ended the claim on your own. So at the very least, before accepting a settlement offer, call us for a free consultation. We can walk you through whether they're actually offering you fair money. And if they are, go ahead and take it. If they've offered you everything you're entitled to, you don't need me. But our experience is that they're going to offer the bare minimum, pennies on the dollar. We've taken on cases where clients have been offered a couple $1,000s before coming to us, and we've put tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in their pocket down the road. So don't accept that little settlement offer just because you think, well, I can do it myself, or what's the lawyer really going to add, or the attorney's fee isn't worth it. I can promise you that if we take your case, it is worth every cent of our attorney's fee, because we're adding way more value. And you don't have to worry about paying us up front. You don't have to worry about paying us out of pocket. We never charge a dime to the client. We take a percentage out of the settlement, and we only take the cases on that we know that we can add value to. So there's just literally no reason to not pick up the phone, get a case evaluation, talk about what the insurance company should be offering, talk about what we think we can get for you, and let us put that extra money in your pocket.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. I think drivers don't understand that's how this works. It is absolutely valuable to have us when we can help. And as you said, if we're going to take the case, you're going to benefit. You're going to win. It's going to be worth your time and your money, because it's costing you nothing to talk to us to begin with. So we talk about a lot about what happens after all of this, and the accidents and the process, which is important. And we want to hammer this home constantly. What are some things that people should do preemptively? I already know one that I would suggest, which is the dash cam. But what should drivers do beforehand to make sure that A, this doesn't happen, or B, when it does happen, they're prepared?
Yeah, I think that the two things would really be arm yourself and educate yourself. And what I mean by that is understand the process before something happens. You should have an understanding of what to do if you're involved in an accident, which, contact us for our checklist. You can keep that on your phone, or you can print it out and put it in your glove compartment, but know what you're going to do when the crash occurs, because that's a really stressful situation. And a lot of times people don't do and say the right things because they're just acting on emotion. If you've got knowledge as to how to handle the crash before you get in it, you're going to make for a better claim. You're going to say the right things to the police officer. You're going to do the right things in terms of gathering evidence and information. So that's the education part. And then when I talk about arming yourself, it's arm yourself with the correct insurance policy, take out that insurance, that rideshare insurance endorsement that we talked about earlier. And as Jared alluded to, buy a dash camera because it's the best evidence that you're going to have of what happened in the crash. We've had situations where people have had dash cameras that it actually changed liability in the case. The insurance company initially thought, well, the rideshare driver's at fault. We pull the dash camera, and then all of a sudden we see, no, the rideshare driver didn't do anything wrong. The other person caused the accident. That's the difference between recovering for your losses and not. So the dash camera is the most important tool that you can have for your safety, whether it's for your physical safety in the vehicle or an accident outside the vehicle. I could not recommend it enough. It's a cost of doing business. Buy it, buy it, buy it right now.
100%. And of course, got to give a huge shout out to Abdul over at Display Ride. If you guys don't have a dash cam, you really need to look at Display Ride. It's a whole, as they call it, it's a whole rideshare monitoring service. I mean, they know if you get into an accident, there's cloud recovery. You can literally dial us immediately after an accident if you have questions. So Display Ride is, if you guys follow Rideshare Guy or Rideshare Professor, I believe he's been on talking about it. We've had him on. So definitely need to look into Display Ride if you don't have one. Brian, you've told this story so many times, and I've talked to drivers who've told me the same thing, where they got a dash cam and it saved them for incidents, for passengers lying, for accidents. So it's super crucial, and I think the arming yourself and educating yourself is a good way to simplify what needs to be done. But yeah, so before we sign off for the weekend, I'll just, as always, give you a chance to talk quickly about how they can reach us, and then we'll head off the weekend.
Yeah, Legal Rideshare is always available for free consultations. The best way to get in touch with us is through our website, LegalRideshare.com, where we've got a contact us form that's going to come right to Jared and my email. You can reach us at help@LegalRideshare.com. If you visit our website, we actually have a chat system where you can talk with a live person anytime. So if you get into an accident, please reach out to us immediately. Time is of the essence. We want to help give you the best opportunity at success. We want to help you recover everything that you're entitled to, and our lawyers will definitely fight for you should we be given the opportunity. So don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Awesome. Thank you, Bryant. And as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.